Well, this week was a momentous one for Justice Robyn Layton, one of the state's best-known judges. Yesterday, she handed down her final court decision in the high-profile case where former Justice Department Chief Executive Kate Lennon sued the state government. And then today, Justice Layton retired from the bench. But it won't end her involvement with the law. She now intends to look at ways to reform the system that she's been working in for more than 4 decades. Justice Robyn Layton began practising law in 1968 and was appointed to the Supreme Court in 2005. In her long and distinguished career, she's worked in many areas of the law, including time as chair of the Sex Discrimination Board, a judge in the Industrial Court, and the chair of a landmark review into child protection. And she says the justice system has changed quite a lot since she began as a barrister 42 years ago.
When I started, there was a keeping away of criticism of the courts and justice. And I think what I've seen is that gradually, more and more, courts are seen more as, or the public are demanding that courts be part of the community. And I think that's a fair call. We shouldn't be removed from community. On the other hand, we shouldn't just be responding in a knee-jerk reaction to community. But if our court system doesn't have public confidence, then I think that we are failing the public.
And while the system has changed, she thinks more change is needed. One area Justice Layton thinks needs looking at is the tough-on-crime approach.
I'm certainly not a great believer of prisons being able to reform anyone. They will keep people off the streets, but it means that they come back out and they offend again, because the treatment that they are given in prisons, insofar as they have it, is very fragmented, and it doesn't change people. It doesn't enable people to come out knowing how they can remain in the community and live a crime-free life.
Part of the way to reduce crime, she says, is to change the way the courts operate.
We have to jail the ones that scare us and treat the ones we're only mad at.
Inspired by the thinker-in-residence Peggy Horer, she recently went to New York to look at new approaches.
They have far more what they call problem-solving courts, which means that they are streamlining cases. Instead of one person going to 3 different courts with a similar background problem, maybe it's drugs, maybe it might be domestic violence, they're all brought and dealt with in the one court, so you don't have 3 courts dealing with it. The second is that they are looking to deal with sex offence cases in a different way, so that sex offenders are not just automatically sent to prison in the hope that they will reform themselves in there, but instead it is a judge-monitored process so that they are put on proper programs, brought back, and then monitored all the way through with the hope that imprisonment is not the absolute outcome. It's only if there is all else fails. Similarly with drug courts, I know we have some good systems here for drug courts, but they have a further embellished system there for making sure that, again, it's judge-monitored so that it's not just leaving it up to the professionals for it to happen out in the ether, but instead brought back to the courts to say, well, how are you going with your program? What are you doing? You had a positive urine test last time. I think you need some more supervision. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time and see what you're doing. So they are more hands-on with the way in which they're dealing with things.
Justice Layton's final day in court was a formal farewell ceremony to mark her last day on the bench. She wore Dame Roma Mitchell's wig. But although she's retired, she says she'll now begin the important work of improving the criminal justice system.
It costs far less to have services to people than it costs to lock them up, and you get a far better outcome for people being able to learn under guidance as to how they can live in a crime-free situation in the community.
But the community does seem to warm to the idea of locking people up. So how are you going to change community attitudes?
Well, I don't think the community is necessarily aware of the other options. I mean, how many people in the community have heard of the Red Hook Community Justice Centre? How many have heard of the integrated violence domestic courts? How many have heard of the sex offences courts that happen elsewhere? It's not only in America, it's also Canada and other parts of the world as well. So I think if the community was better informed about some of the options, they may say, that sounds a very good system. We'd like to see our courts do that as well.
And how are you going to tell people about this then?
Well, I'm going to be out there, and if Radio Talkback will have me, I'll be right there. So I hope to be able to talk to judges first, because I think that we need to, and I'm part of the cohort at the moment, to be part of the process of leading development. Obviously, I need to talk to government. Obviously, I need to talk to other stakeholders, as I say, but also the community. I think they deserve to be informed of what happens elsewhere that might be different from what happens at the moment.
And better by the sounds of it.
I hope so.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.